My name is Robert Honstein, and I'm a composer. As the name suggests, I write music, in particular the piece you're about to hear, but I live in Westchester, New York, just north of New York City, where I also teach at New York University. I teach composition there, and that's probably all you need to know for now.
You
That's me.
sounded a little like you did a little Max Headroom thing at the beginning, but just to be clear, it's Robert Honstein is your name, right? And you're the composer.
Yes, great.
Michael, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yes, my name is Michael Levitabile. I'm the flutist of Hub New Music. I am here in my home in Jamaica Plain, where we're starting to rehearse to make some digital recordings for the season, and I'm obsessively baking sourdough.
I read somewhere that if you weren't a flutist, you'd be a chef. That's like one of your first interests.
Yeah, it's my first interest. My parents were in the restaurant industry when I was a kid, and before I knew what a flute was, I wanted to cook. And so I have this little pipe dream that one day, hopefully sometime soon, I'll write a cookbook. And I throughout quarantine, I've been actually developing and working on a bunch of recipes as a little side
Yeah.
project.
When you do your dessert cookbook, will you please call it the Pied Piper?
Of course.
Okay.
I think suggested calling it Farm to Avatabile, which I'm kind of into because I do love a pun. But I will, that one, Pied Piper, that might also happen. I've been working on my pies a lot.
Excellent. Good to know. We also have the violinist and the cellist of the Hub New Music Ensemble. Alyssa, you want to tell us about you?
Sure. My name is Alyssa Wang, and I'm the violinist of Hub New Music. I moved to Boston in 2016 for graduate school, where I studied violin and conducting at the New England Conservatory. And now I'm playing with Hub. And I guess I've been spending my quarantine eating Mike's bread that he's making for me.
Excellent. Let's hear from you, Jesse.
Hi, my name's Jesse Christison. I'm the cellist of Hub New Music. When I'm not playing with Hub, I'm often flying down to Huntsville, Alabama to serve as principal cellist of the Huntsville Symphony Orchestra. And these days you can find me out on the golf course a whole lot.
Yeah. Well, the reason that we're all here in this little cacophony of Zoom is to talk about this new album that's come out from Hub New Music. That's the ensemble that you guys are from. The music is by Robert Honstein, who's also on the call with us. It's called Soul House. Michael, this is a piece that you and I actually visited last year with my radio series, the Bowling Green radio series. And that's been heard on a whole number of stations. So we got the word out a little bit about that piece, but this new album is coming out. And as we speak, actually, it's about to be released in a couple of days. So it must be kind of an exciting time, but everybody's under quarantine. So there must be some kind of mixed feelings about it. But I assume you guys are excited for it to come out.
Yeah. Rob, we commissioned this piece in like 2015, right? Is when we first up of Soul House. And
That's right. Yeah, I think it was back in 2015.
And it's so exciting to kind of see this whole process unfold over 5 years and to work so closely with Rob, working on this, especially something that's so personal. Rob, do you want to talk, about the content of the piece and what it's about and, why it's so personal?
Absolutely, yeah. So Soul House. Basically, the concept of Soul House is goes back to the ancient world, and it's a vessel that would accompany a spirit into the afterlife. But that was kind of my starting point. But as I started working on it, I became drawn to the house that I grew up in, and I started to think about that house in and of itself being sort of the place where memories and experiences from my childhood, where they resided. And so as I was writing the piece, movements, they sort of became little vignettes about places in the house. You have like the backyard or the alcove, or you have Copper Beech, which is a big tree, stairway. These are all places in my house, and you'll notice they're not like necessarily they're sort of generic, and that was on purpose because a lot of the times my memories would just like rest around just things that you would pass every day, the driveway or something like that. So the piece really kind of became a sort of love letter to the house that I grew up in.
Where is that house? Is it still
Oh,
there?
yeah, it is still there. It's in Princeton, New Jersey.
Okay.
It's no longer in. My parents sold the house, so it's no longer our house, which in a way seems even more fitting because it's now itself is a memory. But yeah, you could still see it. It's there. In fact, actually, a couple of years ago, we did a house concert. We're really lucky that we were able to do. Hub was able to do a performance of Soul House in the Soul House before my parents sold it. That was very special for everyone.
Well, listening to the piece, I mean, I assume you have a lot of great memories associated with that house, but these are also memories that are tied up with the emotions of childhood and nostalgia, and lots of interesting memories of my own are activated when I listen to some of this music in the context of what it's meant to represent. Can you talk a little bit about some of your favorite childhood memories or memories growing up in the house that have a direct musical correlation in this piece?
Yeah. Well, so there are some specific things. The driveway, very specifically in my mind, is a replaying of a scene that happened over and over again, which was, I had two siblings, two younger sisters. And in the morning, my parents would drive us to school. And there was a period of probably like 5 years where we were in intense competition for the front seat. And it was sort of a mad dash. It was whoever got there first got the seat. So, there's a kind of breathless intensity to that movement. And that was really me remembering that rush and that kind of competition among siblings. Another movement, Backyard, has another kind of almost literal memory associated with it, which is I had a dog that I played with all the time in the backyard, and that movement is like it sort of starts out like a fugue, but it's a very contemporary fugue because unlike say Bach, what happens to this fugue is the parts get closer and closer together. So what I was recreating in this fugue was this notion of the chase, and us all running in circles with the dog and the children and the dog running around and kind of getting closer and closer. Yeah, so that's very literal. But then some of the memories are not specific. And, I love to talk about these specific memories when I'm talking about the piece. And certainly at concerts, I've gotten up and said specific things like this. But if you read the note, I don't really get into the specifics in the program note. And part of that is because I think there's something that I was trying to capture in this piece, which was a little bit more maybe universal sense of that nostalgia that you mentioned, that feeling of childhood. And I wanted to capture something which, exists in your memory, but you can't quite grasp, but it holds this special place and it kind of has a hold on you in your present life. And so I really want to evoke a feeling of searching for something that you can't grasp, but which nonetheless is very meaningful and, special. So, yeah.
A couple of my own observations. I mean, right away when you hear the piece, first of all, it's very tonal, very listenable, for lack of a better word. But I'm struck by how you're able to evoke the feeling, the emotion of glass. Does that make sense? At the very opening of the piece,
Yeah.
it sounds like glass. It's quite
Oh,
amazing.
cool. Yeah, there's a very specific technique I'm using, and I'm sure it'd be interesting to hear Hub's take on their experience performing it. But a lot of that movement is based around natural harmonics. The violin and the cello start the movement playing arpeggios of natural harmonics, and I've always found harmonics to have a very glassy quality. And that specific movement was trying to evoke a memory of a window that had beautiful natural light and sort of like the feeling of like the morning with the natural light pouring through. And I wanted to get that sense of light and glassiness And I've always felt that harmonics are particularly good at that, and this particular texture that I created for them, I thought kind of spoke to that sensibility. So yeah, so I'm really glad that you felt that, because that was quite intentionally what I was trying to evoke.
When you went into this piece, Jesse and Alyssa, with those harmonics, were you thinking of trying to create that sound of glass or that feeling of glass? In other words, were there the specific memories that Rob has talked about? Did you try to sort of infuse those with your interpretation?
Yeah, absolutely. We try to do that. We try to bring our own narrative to any piece we would play. And fortunately, Rob left little nuggets of descriptive phrases for us. Shimmering, he uses this word, and so the harmonics themselves already have a sort of a humming clear character to them, and the way that he writes the harmonics where they go up really high and they come back down invites this interpretation of light shimmering through the window. And so when we perform it, we try to emphasize the rising and falling, and bringing out those colors for sure.
Yeah. I assume, Alyssa, you sign off on what Jesse said.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rob's writing in this piece is extremely suggestive in the sense that, every movement is named one word, or mostly one word, but it's representative of a place in the house. And it's just, to me anyways, I think the first time I heard the piece, I just thought that it really was obvious that each movement was called what it was called. And, every time we played a section, it was like, wow, this really does remind me of a window and the lights sparkling. I think in rehearsal we used that phrase a lot, like think of sparkling lights, because it was just so obvious what he was trying to convey.
Yeah. And it's interesting the different kinds of emotions that are represented in music and the combinations of your timbre. I mean, you have a very unique timbre with flute, clarinet, violin, cello. I mean, you don't have a lot of instruments in the ensemble. So it's interesting how Rob takes those different instruments and highlights some of them, like the strings and harmonics are doing glass. I hear a lot with the winds in like the hallway. There's a lot of traveling, a lot going on. Can you talk a little bit about, well, I assume that a lot of the music that you perform was written for you. There's not a whole lot out there for your combination of instruments, is there?
No. So a lot of the repertoire we were first starting, like about 7 or so years ago, there was this handful of music commissioned by this ensemble called the Seattle Chamber Players, and they commissioned a bunch of pieces for our quartet combination. And so there were pieces by Mason Bates and Nico Muhly and Anna Klein. There was a lot of really, really good repertoire. And so unlike a lot of ensembles that have non-traditional instrumentations, we actually had a really nice amount of rep to pull from. And so we didn't have to commission like everything we played. And so translate that to Soul House, we could spend 5 years working on a commission for a 35-minute work that we got to know really intimately, because we had this luxury of this nice small existing body of repertoire, and then we could invest so much time into individual projects.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, whose idea was it for this piece? I mean, did Rob come to you with this idea? Did you work it out together? I mean, how did the commission come about in the first place?
Yeah, so Rob, correct me if my history is totally wrong here, which it very well may be. I found out about you and like emailed you randomly one day, and we got coffee at Fiore's Bakery in Boston, and Hub had programmed like other works of Rob's with additional forces for some local performances. And we just decided to say, hey, let's do a piece, let's do a project together. And the concept came from Rob.
Yeah, no, that's the right history. I mean, Hub prior to this formation had been a more open instrumentation kind of thing, and so they'd played a couple of different my pieces, and we got to know each other that way. And then when Hub was narrowed in on the current instrumentation, Mike and I started talking about writing a piece, and Mike was completely open ended about it. In fact, it originally was a 15 to 20 minute commission, and I got started writing and. At a certain point, I let them know that it's going to be a little more than 20 minutes. So they were very flexible, very very kind to me in that way, and this is the type of commission that I think every composer dreams of, and I absolutely was so grateful for it. It's when you write for a group that A, is incredible players, B, they're going to be totally committed, and C, they're going to play it a ton. They're going to tour the piece, they're going to play it. So I knew all that, and so I really felt like I could just write something that would be ambitious and challenging and big, and I knew that if I did a good job writing it, that they would be able to just absolutely own it and refine it in a way that rarely do you get that kind of luxury as a composer. So I think that was part of what drove me to write such a large piece, and I just kind of kept following my instinct, and we ended up with what we ended up with.
Yeah. Well, it's a large piece, but it goes by very quickly because it's so listenable and imaginative sounding.
It doesn't go by quickly on stage, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it's a workout. I really put them through the ringer, but I'm so glad that it's enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's the way it should be. What precipitated recording this now as an album? Though you've lived with this piece for like 5 years, I think you said. How did the recording come about?
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts, but I also want to make sure I loop in Jesse and Alyssa on this. So as Rob kind of alluded to, we tend to work with a composer and we'll commission them and we'll work with them for a long time and develop a nice, close relationship and tour the piece extensively. And so I think before we sat down in the recording studio, we had performed Soul House publicly like close to 30 times. And the recording process, I think we sat down in the studio to record in February of 2019. And at that point, we felt like we had a really good grasp on the piece because the piece is ours. It's a celebration of this great relationship we've been building with Rob for such a long time. And we wanted to make sure that we were in a place where we felt our interpretation was somewhere that we were comfortable with it being laid down in perpetuity forever on an album. And that tends to be how we operate in the ensemble. Jesse and Alyssa can also speak more to, how long we were touring the piece and getting to know it and the preparation for the recording.
I will jump in and say that we are very excited about this album coming out this week. It is our first album as an ensemble, and we're particularly excited. It's the first of many we are hoping and planning. And because a big part of our mission is we want this instrumentation of flute, clarinet, violoncello to become more standard, more common, played at all levels. And as we produce these albums and get these new works out there, we really want to inspire other people to take on these pieces and this instrumentation as well. We're really excited.
Alyssa, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I guess I could speak a little bit to what it felt like to record the piece, because it is about 35 minutes long. And I think we recorded it over the course of just 2 days. And, I don't think any musician seriously enjoys the recording process. It can be quite, I don't know, it's sort of like listening to your own voice back on a recorder. You sort of are like, oh, is that really what I sound like? It's a little bit what it's like to record as an ensemble. But yeah, we really I think because we played it so much in concert, the recording process was, I believe, made much easier than if we hadn't played it so much. So once we laid it down, it was sort of like, wow, I guess that's it. It was like a really fast 2 days, and then suddenly we were like, it's out of our hands now. Like, it's out there. It's going to be out there in the world. And but it's been a long time coming, and we've waited a long time to get this album out, and we're super excited for everyone to hear it.
But Jesse, you talked about trying to increase the repertoire, build the repertoire for your instrumentation of this group. Is that something that Hub is actively involved in, trying to get that music out there to perhaps other potential groups that would use a similar instrumentation to you?
Yeah, absolutely. As is standard and typical with new music, whenever an ensemble commissions a piece that's written for them, we usually have a period of exclusivity where we're the only people allowed to play it and record it and tour it. At first, it's usually a year or two. But a lot of our concerts are at universities and high schools and a lot of educational things. And we're always encouraging the students to form an ensemble like this, or with some slight tweaks, and to do some messing around on their own. And I think we've already heard of another group attempting to take on Soul House now that our performance exclusivity has ended. And we're nothing but encouraging of that. We think great music deserves to be played frequently and everywhere.
Yeah.
And also with Soul House, it was one of our first major commissions, and we like that other composers who write for us now and in the future can use Soul House sort of as a cheat sheet, a template for ways that they might write for us as well, and some devices, ideas they could take from Soul House and combine with their own.
We had a reading of student works at a university residency recently, and I can't remember which school it was, but that student had definitely taken the harmonic passage from Soul House, and we were rehearsing, getting ready for this reading. We had a moment where we're like, oh my God, bar 4 is Soul House. So we've actually seen literal pop and drops of passages from our other repertoire in other pieces.
I think that's great. I'm flattered by that. I mean, to me, that's how composition evolves. Composers, and they are always taking ideas from each other and embellishing it and making it their own. So
Rob, composers have permission from you to quote your music in their works. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, they do, but I don't necessarily even mean quotation. I mean, I think a lot of times what happens is, we study the work of the past and we listen to the work of the present, and we hear textures or approaches that we like. And the natural, organic way, I think, to come up with new ideas is to take things you've heard and combine them with other things you've heard and come up with new things. So I think it's just completely normal to have that kind of a process. Honestly, that harmonic arpeggiation, I didn't make that up. Like, you could find that in, Ravel all over the place, or other composers. Like, they've been arpeggiating harmonics for a long time. But, so it's great. I love that people are looking to Soul House when they write to you. That's awesome.
Well, my question to you, Rob, then, is what other composers had a big effect on your musical style? And when I say your musical style, I mean this particular acoustic style that you bring into
Sure. Yeah. For this piece, I would say, okay, so a couple things. I actually did spend a lot of time listening to all that repertoire that Mike mentioned, all those pieces that were written for the Seattle Chamber Players. So, yeah, Mason Bates, Nico Muley, Anna Klein, Yevgeny Charlot wrote a great piece for them. So I looked at those scores and I studied them, got a lot of ideas about how to approach the ensemble, voicings and textures, et cetera, et cetera. I also, around the time of writing it, I was involved with a bunch of collaborative projects with Sleeping Giant, which is a composer collective I'm in. And there's 6 of us: Andrew Norman, Ted Hearn, Jacob Cooper, Chris Cerrone, Timo Andres, and myself. And honestly, I was listening to a lot of their music, and I was it's hard to say a specific composer from the past, but that swirl, my colleagues and the people I was studying, I think, had a big influence on my sound. In fact, this is like super current news. We just recently posted a video of Backyard as a sort of sneak peek for the release on Friday. And Backyard used, as I mentioned, this sort of fugal technique that turns into friend, and in that collective he commented, "Oh, this is so great, I wish I had thought of it." And I wrote back to it and said, "Well, actually, Andrew, I think I kind of took that idea from the piece you wrote for Eighth Blackbird, in which basically everyone in the ensemble sort of copies the cello, but really quickly." So so that's kind of what I mean about just this sort of the sea of influence and ideas in the air. And I think a lot of things influence me. So that's your long answer. I don't have a concise like three composer list. It's just the soup of music that's in my head, and in the world at the time I'm writing it.
Let me ask you about the last piece, the last movement on here. It's called
Sure.
Secret Place. There was a dance video out to this Secret Place music. People can find that online. We'll put a link to it on our website. But what was your secret place?
Well, it wouldn't be a secret now, would it?
I was hoping you'd make a little news here and reveal it for us.
Brad, why don't you tell
Oh, Brad, you want the scoop, don't you? Well, I will not reveal the secret place. I'm so sorry to say. But what I will say is this, that the idea of the secret place is something that I think is also common to a lot of experiences of childhood. It's just that, as a child, it's an intense time. You're learning new things every day. You're encountering new experiences. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety, as well as a lot of wonder and joy. But like I do think, for me at least, I felt, and I'm sure a lot of other kids felt this. I felt a need to find a space where I could just retreat to myself, some place that was for no one else, where I could sort of just be with my own thoughts and have a break. And that's what the secret place meant for me. In my mind, that's kind of what it meant. It was sort of a place, an interior place, where, you could just sort of sort it all out, all the intensity of what's happening. Um, and, the fifth secret place, I'm not going to say. I'm just not going to give it away.
Okay,
Rob?
well, I'm gonna ask the others then.
Rob, in the past 5 years,
I don't think I've told them.
what the secret place is, and you haven't told me.
I
How many times have you asked?
It's become a punchline at this point. It really has. Where whatever joke of the day, we'll call it the secret place or something. And certainly when we went and had the opportunity to perform at the Soul House, we split up and we went on a mission to turn over all the stones at the house and look for places that might be secret. There were a couple votes that maybe it was an area up towards the top of the house, perhaps an attic type area that we thought had a magic quality to it. But Rob, to his credit, has stoically denied confirming or denying any of our guesses so far.
Yeah, Jesse, what's your personal secret place?
That's a good one. The easy answer, of course, would have to be one's bedroom when you're growing up. The one place that you run away from your parents or whatever it is to hide away. But there's a lot of rooms in Rob's house. I could see running away to any of them.
Hey guys, I'm going to give a little teaser, but it doesn't have to be in the house.
Rob, don't know.
That's what I
We're
was
so
thinking.
close to narrowing it down.
All right, maybe we should leave that one there. Let it remain a mystery.
We have to get a map in New Jersey to figure it out. Let's see.
Right.
Michael, you have a secret place?
Oh God, do you have a secret place? Well, I live about 2 blocks away from Franklin Park in Boston, and in these kind of crazy, troubling quarantine times, I find myself going to this very specific rock in Franklin Park and sitting on it and just like overlooking the natural beauty of Franklin Park. And I would say that is where I go to be alone with my thoughts.
Yeah. What about you, Alyssa? You have a secret place you can tell us about?
Honestly, I feel really at home anywhere where I'm with a book by myself.
Yeah.
So wherever I am with that book, then I just retreat in my little world, and then that becomes my secret place.
Yeah, that's great. And I think hearing from the three of you sort of shines a light on the emotional quality that this music, presents in different people. We all hear something a little bit different to it, but the reason that it's been presented to us as, in context of memory, nostalgia, it has kind of a deeper emotional feeling. So that was a fun experiment. Thank you for joining in that. I know the album is coming out on Friday, which is just a couple of days from now as we're making this video. You guys have any plans? Are you doing some kind of virtual release, or what's going on with that?
Right now, not yet. I think we're kind of feeling out what the world is going to look like in the next couple of months and see how we do that. We're actually, in addition to getting ready for the album to come out on Friday, next week we're in the recording studio pre-recording several recitals that have moved digitally. So we're actually getting together with another good friend of ours named Hannah Lash, who's the composer harpist, and we're recording 3 recitals with her. But beyond that, yeah, we are starting to think about what a digital release party would look like, especially with a music video project we have coming out, because Brad, you had alluded to the Secret Place video. We have videos for every movement of Soul House that we're working on releasing and doing a party around that.
These are performance and dance videos choreographed?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? We haven't mentioned that, but we really should, because the dance is a very special part of this project. Maybe you were about to say that, Mike. But
Right.
we collaborated with Urbanity Dance, which is an incredible dance company in Boston, and one of I think the most memorable performances of Soul House was at the Peabody Museum, where Urbanity and Hub presented the full piece along with the choreography. I'm sure you guys could speak more about it, but it was really cool as a composer to see the way that dancers interpreted my music, and they came up with their own narrative and their own concepts for the movement about how it goes with each of my pieces of music. And yeah, so we were really lucky to be able to film that. And incidentally, where we filmed it was kind of cool. Was at my current house, which yeah, there's a kind of nice poetic circle to that. I wrote the piece about the house I grew up in, and the video was filmed at the house where my kids are now growing up. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Do they have a secret place in your house?
Well, with today's digital surveillance technologies, I was working on finding that, and I will be able to pinpoint that precisely once.
Okay.
They're only 5 and 3, so I don't know if they've found their secret place quite yet.
May take a while. Well, I've really appreciated the conversation today. It's music that I first heard last year, and I've lived with a little bit, and then listening to this beautiful recording of it really brings it home. I hope that a lot of folks can download it. We should mention it's from New Amsterdam Records. If they want to get this online, do they go to New Amsterdam, or they go to Bandcamp, or how does that work?
All of the above. You can go to Newam and they will link you to Bandcamp. And I just found it earlier today. I think it's going to be up on Spotify sometime Friday, fingers crossed. And yeah, it's all over the internet.
Okay, excellent.
But of course, Bandcamp is the best way to support the artist. That way it goes directly to Hub, and
You can buy it.
As little of it goes to Daniel Eck, the Spotify CEO. So that's Bandcamp. Woo!
3 cheers for Bandcamp. But how are you guys holding up now under the quarantine? I know, Michael, you talked a little bit about what Hub is doing. Rob, what have you got going on? I mean, is it affecting your work as a composer, as a teacher? How is it affecting?
Yeah, it's been quite a wild ride. I mean, honestly, the hard part of it has been my role as a parent. Having 2 kids, and then they're both in preschool, and then that was closed, and then we had to deal with both my wife and I working, and childcare. That was the most challenging aspect of it. But with respect to composing, actually, I kind of lucked out through sort of serendipitously. I had a project would come up at the same time as the pandemic, which was I'm scoring a feature-length documentary, and that was sort of the perfect project for the pandemic because, I had to write. I've written like hours of music actually for it, but all of it was just sort of passing demos back and forth, which meant I could really just create with my computer essentially and get feedback and work on it. So I felt like I was able to just be very productive, which was lucky because I wasn't, but all of my commissions for performances, they've all been postponed till next year. I mean, I'm grateful they're postponed and not canceled. So I have work, but that's kind of what I've been doing as a composer the last 4 months or so.
Michael or Jesse or Alyssa, you want to add anything to how it's affected you guys right now?
It's really interesting that the pandemic has turned us from a touring chamber music ensemble to like our own in-house media production company. And so instead of going to Logan Airport, which I never thought in my life I would say I really, really miss, we are going to a local concert hall and working with a videographer and recording all our recitals and sending presenters, and we're Hub Studios now.
Yeah, and we probably wouldn't be doing this interview on the Zoom platform if it weren't for everything that's going on. But I appreciate you guys all tuning in from where you are. We've been talking with flutist Michael Abitabile, violinist Alyssa Wang, cellist Jesse Christensen, and also composer Robert Honstein. The album is called Soul House from New Amsterdam Records. We'll link to it all from our website and when we push this out to social media. And again, thank you guys for spending some time today. I really enjoyed the album.
Thank you.
So much, Brad.
Thank you so much.